Yeah, we're all clones here, all clones on this bus. And I want to remind everyone um, pretty much every evening when we do a chat and then we do group meditation, you don't have to go back to the first meditation to see the meditation because I do it every night. It's the same breathing 20% and visualizing and illuminating and going into your Akashic record and and we Jace, go experience the same thing. But I kind of want to start off with a little tale of a class clone. So when I was in first grade, and the first education I got was from my grandmother, which was unconditional Italian love and food, and taking me to all kinds of interesting places. And my parents tried to do that within a context of their busy, busy life, right? And so I was in my own private little Idaho, and I was, when I was an infant, the first thing I did when I still, when I came back, my grandma took care of me, but, I would be taken back to my family, and I stay there for a few days and then go up and spend the rest of the week or weeks or months with my. But one time when I was just crawling, I basically crawled up to an electric socket, got myself a knife, and stuck it into the energized. In a duplex outlet, you have a big long slot and a small little slot. And the small little slot is the one that's energized. The larger one is what is called as the neutral. And electricity flows like water. So it needs a drain. And the neutral is a drain. And the little U one, that's called the ground. And that's like the safety drain. Meaning, if for some reason your appliance shorts out to the body of the appliance, the ground is there to cause the circuit breaker or the fuse to trip. And so, but because I was a little infant and I wasn't connected to either of those two things, I stuck the knife into the hot. I had a 50-50. I could have stuck it in the other one and nothing would have happened, but I stuck it into the hot one. And because I wasn't grounded, and because I was a little infant and I was in my little onesie, and there was no metallic anything to carry the current and give me a real shock. I was just getting a non-grounded energy. I was being energized, right? And so, ooh, that boy, I was getting a little tingle in my little parts, and boy, that was kind of fun. And I, was like, And my sister, who pretty much was kind of pissed off that I took her place as the youngest. And so she would, she came, Mommy, I'll be pluggy boom boom. And yeah, little sparks were shooting out of the outlet. But, I wasn't dead or I wasn't electrocuted, and I was kind of enjoying it. I was giggling. And my mother, big, tall, my mom, she came running over the outlet and their new wool carpet. Her feet were going on it, and that was her chi. She was really grounded. So when she reached down to grab me, she was blown across the living room into furniture, and came over and kicked me. After she came to, she kicked me out of the outlet rather than grabbing me. And then she turned my crib so I couldn't get out. I was incarcerated. And, then I went back to my grandma. And that was kind of the dynamic. I always had this cheeky little monkey. I always did things that people just didn't understand. And because I wasn't in the tussle for affection and attention in my family because I had unconditional love and attention from my grandma and the people in her life. I mean, her community was just that, a community, and they were not a town or a village. Um, they were they weren't a tribe either. They were more like a small group who cared for each other. And so that's what I got. I got that small group of attention who cared about everybody. And I was the youngest and I was the cutest and I was always doing something that was like, wow. And so I was supported in that. You know, no one screamed at me, no one punished me, no one did anything. And I was given an understanding of how to navigate, that you navigated through the world. You know, you didn't march, you didn't try to be the sheeple, you navigated, you were yourself, who you were. And but I was always that cheeky little guy. So again, when it came time around 6, I went off to kindergarten. And I went to the public kindergarten that was near my grandma. And Mrs. Gerling was, oh, she was like blonde haired, beautiful, read a story, Charlotte Webb, Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Grimm's fairy tales. And she was amazing because she read us these stories and she didn't make light of them. She tried to make us understand that these were actual stories that were giving a perspective of what's out there. We're in this beautiful protected little envelope of Mrs. Gerling's love, and she'd bring us milk and cookies that she made herself. She just didn't get the cookies from the lunch lady. She did get the milk containers from them, but she baked the cookies, right? And she had beautiful little cushions we napped on, and it was just the most bucolic. Like last night, right, when we went into state and went into our Akashic record, and we visualized our sanctuaries of our own choosing, where our superconscious mind is. And we went in there and we found the gazebo and the meadow that was raked so we could all sit and watch the gazebo. Everyone went into their own sanctuary of their own choosing with their guardians, their guides, their librarian, their animal totem, and their guardian angel, and went in there and experienced everyone together. Everyone on their little picnic blanket with their picnic basket, and they came together and closer, and they were like this puddle of love. And that's what I experienced in kindergarten. So I was visualizing that for you guys to experience that. And so I went, that was amazing. My grandma's unconditional love, her, not tribe, it's another word. I was using it today. Community or small, like when tribe is like a city, or a large group of Indians, right? Or indigenous people. That's a tribe. When it's just a little group, 9 or 10, is another word for that. Anyway, so that's the kind of life I grew up in. Not many people have that kind of nurturing, and I had no real, if I was in my family, it would be like a group of feral animals, well, that's how my 100% Italian father with, hypoglycemia. So when his blood sugar went off, he would just like, and my mom, who was like a Irish German, so she was like a Nazi with a attitude, and and my brothers and sisters who were all kind of, what's going to happen next? Oh, like almost living what the poor children in Syria are. But we didn't have Air Force dropping bombs on us or deadly gases or napalm. But it was could almost be that way. And I would say that a good number of American families had this dynamic. And it brought on schizophrenia of our country. Because you have this one element of love and caring and it being told that this is the best place, and then, carpet bombing in your living room. So, of emotions. So I would say that the majority of the population is suffering from PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. And I very luckily escaped that, you know. And I had these passions for knowledge, reading, electricity, physics, art. So my grandma would take me to all the art museums. I would see all this stuff and go, hmm. And I was never told what to think, just to think. And I have to say, my parents were very supportive of that. And the other thing my parents weren't, they weren't that prejudiced, because they were so busy trying to be better than the, next door neighbor. My father really had, he grew up Italian, and as when he was a young boy and a teenager, being Italian was like worse than being black. It's like being Muslim today, or Hispanic, or Mexican, right? Or all of them put together. And America's always been that way. And so we have to start looking at truth. And that's why Donald Trump is actually very important and a great blessing, because he is no worse than any of these other morons. Our legislators are the best money can buy. And they're corrupt and venal and do really bad things. I don't even know why half of them would want to be in the position they're in, because, again, they're walking on thin ice. If anyone ever found out what they have done, oops, right? And now Donald Trump, he is doing this thing where nothing matters, right? Truth doesn't. What's truth? Hey, what's truth? Well, truth is what love's co-creation is. And that's the beauty of Donnie, because he's like the X-lax of the body politic, and he is emptying the colon of our legislature democracy, which we don't even have. We live in a corporate oligarchy. There's this little club, and we're not part of it. Today, I've been watching a lot of George Carlin, and I suggest everyone go watch that guy, because. And again, gang, there is no late. Wherever you drop in, it's all good. This ain't like Miss Roundtree's class, which I'm getting towards. And that's why the name of this live chat is Class Clone. Okay. So I was an outlier. I was a different guy, but I kind of was taught by all of this group that protected me, with unconditional love. And most of these people were immigrants, Italians, Jews, blacks, Irish, Puerto Rican. They were all immigrants, right? And everyone was striving for the American dream. And that's the one thing that actually kind of does work. The rest, you look at all these other countries, Why is France having the issues it's having? It's because it's a super racist country. Why is Sweden, Germany, England, all because they're all super, they're so tribal in that it's all white people, and then when all these other people come in, and especially the ones that these countries that were imperial in the 18th and 19th century, and took people's lands, and and at a certain while they had to get the people that they were trying to oppress. This is a very Roman Empire motif. You know, if you play along, we'll give you a slice of the pie, and you can become a citizen. So when these countries got liberated, in Africa and Jamaica and all the English entities, they were given the choice of being English immigrants, being English citizens and coming to England, or being French citizens and coming to France, or staying in their own country, right? And a good number of them went there because they were well educated, they were well implemented into these different imperial countries' bureaucratic systems, and they went there and got jobs. And at that time, especially after World War II, all these countries needed laborers, needed people. So, and these people could speak French. They were from North Africa. Yeah, they could speak English. They were from Jamaica, but they could do a great job cleaning the toilets in the hospital, and they basically motivated their children to go to school to get a good education and step up. And that's what's happened. Every immigrant country, the immigrants do better than the laggard white folk who've been there for 5 or 6 generations, right? So there I was, surrounded by people of that nature, of like really smart, really caring, really wanting to be the American dream, really stepping up. And those were my examples, and they didn't live by prejudice or anger or fear. They lived because they were so focused on what they were doing. That's what they were doing. So I hadn't, when I saw, I didn't understand, racism and or hate or any of this. And I was in my own private Idaho of, playing with the fields of the universe. I kind of stumbled into Tesla world when I was about 4, right? My Uncle Steve and a few other people kept giving me, oh, look at this, this is a Tesla coil. Look at this is a Jacob's ladder. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, put this in a vacuum and put some noble gases in there and put super high voltage in there. Ooh, look what happens. I was doing that when I was, 7. I made my first Tesla coil when I was 10. A big one, so big that the FCC wanted to know where that juice was coming from. So anyway, first grade comes and I go off to, like the rest of my siblings, to Catholic school, to Hitler's Rifle Squad, Holy Redeemer. And before I was going to go there, somebody set the school on fire. So instead of going to school in September, we went in November. And so I got, more weeks to go play with what I like playing with. But I finally had to go. And I went with my friend Teddy Werner. He was from our neighborhood. And the Werners were Irish and had like 15 kids. And Teddy was interesting young lad. Every one of his brothers and sisters were like from another planet. And it drove poor Mrs. Werner insane, right? And so Teddy was my bud, and that was it, me and Teddy. And we were invisible. We walked in and like nobody was there. It's like when I came back to my family at 7, my dad once said, "Who is this kid? He's not one of us. He doesn't belong here." How's that for, emotional support? When your father tells you, "Who is this kid? We don't know him. He doesn't belong here. He's not one of us." And luckily, I just didn't even listen to it. It just kind of went, I mean, I listened to it because, hey, I'm telling you now, I mean, it did have an effect, but not like crushed me. I kind of just said, okay, I'll stay away from that dude. And, I did. And I was a very observant young lad, and my dad, being a military guy, he would scream orders. And my brothers would say, I'm not going to do that. And they get into gigantic fights. And, there was a point when my brother was 16, 17, and he was, the hormones were pumping in. And he had a fist fight with my dad almost every night. And there was a point when we didn't have a single door in our house because my brother would run into a room. My brother would get a few good licks in, and then my dad would start pummeling my bro. And so my bro would run into a room, and my dad would just kick the door in. It would explode. It'd be, the door jam, everything. And I remember bringing a friend home once, and all of the doors were leaned against the wall. And he was like, what the hell happened here? My dad. But my dad really wasn't. After I became a social worker years and years later, and I would compare what my parents were to what was going on in the projects. My parents didn't, lock us into closets. My parents didn't chain us to the radiator. My parents didn't use us as an ashtray. You know, yeah, we had to like deal with who they were as a human being. And that's when, at a young age, I kind of realized that my parents weren't superheroes or weren't the best parents or weren't the greatest of anything. They were just people. They had the good side, the bad side. I tried to play to their good side, right? And their good side was kind of fun. My mom was really smart. She really loved to read and write. And I read books with her. And we had the most fun. And she could really bake. And I helped her bake, and she liked that. And the fact that I didn't, the one thing about my mom was once I would do something like I electrocuted her and blew her across the room and, like banged her up, okay, I didn't do that again. Not until at least 10 years later when I had a dump capacitor of like half a trillion volts, and I forgot to bleed it, right? So this, thing was just like, and my mother got between it and the ground. Ooh, it like shot her again across, I didn't come home. I went to my grandma's for a week, So I knew, not to test my mom's metal. I told the story about when I made a little sun in our driveway, and it got away from me and enveloped me just as my mom was driving in to the driveway, and it like singed every hair of my body, my clothes, and it turned me into a Red Lobster Yul Brenner. And my mom went, ah! And she drove her favorite Cadillac, her 1961 gold Cadillac, into the swimming pool. And luckily, she went into the shallow end because she went into the deep end, she would have been dead. Because I had to get her out of the car. And I got her, I jumped in the water, A, because I was like, a son. I had to like, you know, extinguish that. And I swam over to her and got her out of the car. And then once I got her, and my mom was always a queen. She always wore amazing clothes. She had really long hair, like down to her knees, but she would have it all up. And, she looked like the queen of the planet. Everyone would say, yes, ma'am, or, bow or curtsy to her, even, in the supermarket. And got her out, and, she went, I'll get you, and if luckily, I was watching Kung Fu, and I broke her thing, and I ran away from her, and luckily she's been smoking 3 packs of cigarettes every day for the last 4 years, so she couldn't. Go back and look at that when I tell the whole story. Anyway, I knew my parents, so I played to their best side, right? But you can't do that in the outside world. And when you are in your own private Idaho, when you're thinking about, universal power and not power like political power, but spiritual power and multiple. I mean, I had envisioned. I read Einstein and said, and I envisioned from what he had said and other physicists, that there was a multiple dimension, that time wasn't what Einstein's, and I'm at 10 thinking these things. And I would try and have conversations with people, and they were like, and the few people who would say, whoa, that is amazing. And they'd want to talk to me. Kind of like, I'm not saying that I'm Jesus, but it was kind of like Jesus when he was, 13 and he was at the main temple and all the rabbis were calling him rabbi. Oh, they didn't call me, but they were like, whoa. So all of that time from birth until I went to first grade, I had most people go, huh? And then a few really interesting people going, oh, wow, you are an amazing kid. I'm going to take the time and effort to try and be a teacher, a example, a good part of your life. So most people don't have that. I did. In spades, a lot of people, not just one, not just two, a lot of people, because my grandma would expose me to different people, and so did my parents. I have to say, my parents were not like ashamed of that of me, right? And I would talk to, my parents had lots of cocktail parties, and I would talk to people like me, like I'm talking to you, and half the people there, or 3/4 of people go, huh? Or maybe 10-20% would go, wow. Okay, I'm gonna come back and talk to this kid. Anyway, so first grade, I get sent off to Catholic school, me and Teddy Warner, and we're like invisible. So the bullies don't even pick on us because we are so invisible. Because we are, I remember bullies trying to bully me, and I ignored them, and it just kind of went right over my head, and I was no fun. I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried. I didn't talk back. I was invisible because I was ignoring everyone else. And when people do it today, they're called autistic. No, they're not. Oh. Anyway, so we're at, Hitler's Rifle Squad, and I'm in this, class of like 60, and this one stressed out nun, Sister Holy Roller Skate, was there, and she was going on, and it was kind of the Cold War, and we were having not aero but duck and cover drills, and my dad was in the Air Force. I was kind of exposed to what Strategic Air Command and what Russia had, and what an atomic bomb was and what it could do. I kind of knew it, seen it, done it, which gave me a very existential point of view. I was like Kafka before I read Kafka. And, so they started having these drills, and I wouldn't get out of my seat and get under my, desk, and shiver, and the nun, again, I was kind of sitting over. She didn't notice me the few first times, but one time she, has a bad, reason, and she comes over and get under the table. I said, no, I don't need to. And she goes, what do you mean don't need to? I said, well, sister, look, the window in our classroom is a big, gigantic glass window, and it's facing, the Empire State Building. Empire State Building is going to be ground zero for whatever Russian missile or bomb is going to be thrown at us, and probably a hydrogen bomb, probably something in the order of 100 megatons, which is about 100,000 times more volatile than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And first, the blast, not the blast like a concussive, but the light, the will turn us into dust. The X-rays, the proton, everything will just. And I just kind of very calmly explain what a nuclear weapon does and what it'll do to us. And I must have really snapped something in her, because she grabbed me by the throat and pushed me against the wall and started to not slap me, but punch me. Bang, bang. And she was a lefty, so she broke the orbit of this eye and my jaw, right? And when I put my hand up, she somehow broke the fingers of my hand. Anyway, so, I'm, bleeding and broken, and the head nun is gonna, cut this off in the past. So she has called that Catholic mental institution to, put me in there because I'm insane, right? Not the nun who nearly killed me, but, So my mom shows up because they called her up, and I'm like half out of it. But I hear the nun say, "Oh, don't worry, Mrs. D. We've got the ambulance coming to take your son to the mental institution." And my mom said, "No, no, 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 no. I know he's a handle, but no. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." And she kind of picked me up, and I was still a small little peanut in those days, and she carried me home. And that was like one of the most connective sweetness of my mom when she did that, pick me up, and I would get really sick a lot, and every time I did, she snapped into her. She used to run a hospital. She's turned into her doctor self. You could never get over on, Mom, I don't feel. Oh, go to school. Anyway, so I didn't end up in a mental institution, but I did end up back with Mrs. Girling, right? And I would go to this place in Garden City where these Maryknoll priests were, and they were like beatnik monks, right? And they didn't wear the uniform. They wore like brown pants and brown turtlenecks. That was it. They kind of all smoked pipes. They all had beard. They all had kind of longish hair, not really, but way longer than whatever priests most priests I would have anything to do with they almost had a military look, right? So for those 2 years, I had a really amazing experience of back with Mrs. Girling, right? And I became the older, I was in kindergarten for 1, 2, 3 years and going to these monks, and they were, one was a shrink, one was a historian, ancient history, mathematician, sociologist, political scientist, anthropologist. And that's why I am a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, because of those guys, those 9 guys, right? And all of the stuff I teach you, they were teaching me when I was like, I guess, how old are you when you were 7? Is that how old you were in first grade? 7, 8, something like that. 7, I think. And then for those 2 years, Mrs. Girling and them. I mean, the best. Then my parents moved us to area called Old Brookville, Long Island. And this was, again, at a very interesting time, 1960, 61, and 62 maybe. And this area was where the rich had their estates. And they weren't out in the Hamptons, but they were here. And most of those estates were kind of unwinding. Those families were either dead or moved on. And we lived right next to this one called Anderson. And he owned one of the largest paper companies in the world. And all his kids and wife and everybody died. He outlived everybody. And so they had horses and they had dogs and he had a chauffeur. And his family was his servants, right? They treated him nice. And so I got to go to the dog shows because they needed somebody and they had whippets, and I would go to the big dog show that you see on TV and then walk dogs around. I got to take care of horses, I was really a little peanut, so I wasn't going to be, and these were big horses, but they were nice, and they had cows, and I got to understand, because my best friend was my dog, Dandy, that horses and cows were just bigger dogs, and they were more powerful than dogs, but dogs are, wolves, so they can do you in if they want to. And, but I just treated them with, and that's where I really got into this dynamic of energetic compassion and empathy, because I could feel those animals. I could put my hand on, and I could feel that horse, his heart, his blood. I could feel all the energies in that horse, and that horse would be like, whoa, this guy actually is like connecting to me. He's actually feeling, and would like, I like this guy, and I'd always have carrots. The guy who took care of the horses told me, always have a pocket full of carrots and apple slices, little bits. And so I'd give that to them, and showed me how to hand it to them without losing my fingers. And the same thing with cows, and they all love to be brushed. They didn't have lots of them, so I could brush them all, and they all loved it. I would say you're right. I mean, we are heading towards some really wild times. I told you guys a few days ago, the next 3 months are going to be, and we can get through the next 3 months, we can get on the other side of this, right? And it's not all Donald Trump's fault. I mean, Donald Trump is probably the best president we could have. I mean, he is no less of a crook than Obama or Hillary or W or Billy Boy or Jimmy or Nixon or any of those guys, you know. And Kennedy was until he took a lot of acid and kind of said, Yeah, and he was dying. I mean, he was pretty fucked up physically, and he knew his ticket was going to be punched, and that's why he took every drug in. His doctor was called Doctor Feelgood, so that's why he was like living large. You know, he became president. He kind of looked around and said, "You know what? I can actually do things that no one else could do. I might as well because I'm going to be dead soon." You know. Iowa. I love helping clean up around the place. Yep. Well, my basically thinking is it's going to be a lot of places, not just one. It's going to be a bunch to the point where our military, meaning what more in the Middle East can we bomb? We've pretty much bombed everything into. I mean, every war there we precipitated, right? We told everyone, go for democracies, go for the Arab Spring. And then, when the people rose up, we sold more machine guns to the oppressive regime, you know? Yep. All animals are lovely to be around, you know? And at the deep green, wolves, bears, owls, every kind of little mole and ferret and fox. They're all around. They all come and visit me, and they're very nice. I don't leave. I put my compost way away from me, and I let them go chew it up, and they're very nice because they eat it and then shit it right there. So it's like, most compost piles you have to mix up. Well, the animals do it for me, and then in the spring, I have my boys go over there and shove it into, tarps, and they drag it over to, I have raised beds, and they fill that up, and then the animals do not touch the raised bed because I keep leaving them stuff over in the compost pile. Good times, exactly. And so what I'm feeling is that things are so outside of most people's point of view that we have the great opportunity for a reset without incinerating the world. Pretty much the different powers that be have been at this for so long, at least in the last 70 years, since World War II. They kind of have the reference, well, we don't want to do another incinerate of Europe and all our countries and put us back in the Stone Age. And we've had this Cold War thing where we've jostled and gotten someplace. And, my thinking is because, again, the powers that shouldn't be they're not just American or, EU, or they are a transnational fascist corporate group representing everybody, right? And if you go look up the Khazarian mafia, I've spelled it for you again. Let's see if I got it written down someplace. They've been around forever, and they are, the poster folks. As I was giving you in the pyramid structure, they're the owners at the top. Then there's the managers. Then there's the worker drones, and then there's the expendables. And the no one that we think, it's not the Rothschilds, not the Queen of England, it's not the Rockefellers who are at the top of the Illuminati. No, they're in the manager class. The folks at the top, nobody's seen them. They're in a club so elite, they don't even show themselves. Oh, here it is. Khazarian, Mafia. And that is one of the managerial groups, but they interact, there's different mafias, but this mafia's got a little bit of that. So every war, every criminal enterprise, they're the top of, in the, Captain America, Hail Hydra, that's the guys, right? And the Nazis, the Aryan race that they were looking for was these Khazarian, right? And they were the Anunnaki Jews. They're not Hebrews, right? They're this other class. So go look up their story, At another night, I'll give you the total 411 on those guys. But you just have to realize right now, the worst thing you can be is scared, What is more important, because if you get scared, you're going to end up looking like this. Glowing green. This is what you look like just before you throw up and bleed out of every orifice when you get radiation poisoning. That's why I picked this color for this evening. So, the worst thing you can do is get scared, right? The best thing you can do is say the Our Father and the Hail Mary a few times a day. Right? Every time you feel a little scared, right? And practice going into state. Because if the worst case scenario happened and they, everyone unloads the, 70 to 80,000 nuclear weapons that are strewn across this planet, will be a glowing globe. And, if you're in fear, you're not going to like that. But if you go into state, go into your Akashic record, and then go into the sanctuary of your own choosing, of your superconscious mind, just what you experienced last night. You can be on a nice little picnic blanket, cuddling in love with all your relations rather than writhing in pain. And that's kind of why I started doing this, why I started the 40 days and 40 nights little program. And we still got about another 15 days of the 40 days. Like I said, 3 months. And this is not linear. The 40 days were not a linear period. So, January, February, March, April, May 1st. May 1st, we make it by May 1st. Enough shit will happen that people will start going, no. Instead of going, well, that's just Donald Trump, they're going to go, no. That's not just Donald Trump. That's all these morons. Why are the Republicans and Democrats not eating this guy's lunch? Because Donnie was put in there. I mean, he had that TV show. He still thinks he's on the set of The Apprentice. I am sure they got that poor guy's head wired like a video game. So, that's, So, we'll keep going with the clone, the class clone, right? So, I go to this public school, in Glen Head, Long Island. So there's Glen Cove and Garden City. Only two cities. Freeport and Glen Cove are the two cities in Long Island, right? And Freeport was where my dad grew up, and it was where all of the entertainers. It was like the Hollywood of the East Coast. Before Hollywood, all the movies, all the entertainers, they're all in New York. They were all, on Broadway, or they were in vaudeville. And all those people had houses on the Great South Bay, where Freeport, which had first been a fishing and trawling and whaling, it was like New England. Most of eastern Long Island was like New England because they had boats, and the people over there in Connecticut and Massachusetts, just came to Long Island because Anyway, so we I went to this, and it was a very interesting school system, North Shore school system, and they were really, you know, realizing what education was, and they had the money because all of the rich guys who had estates, were paying property taxes through the consumer, and they were millionaires. Who cared? So they built a school system that was like a private school system, but it was for all the people who worked for these rich guys. And the rich guys, all their families were dead or whatever, so they were like, sure, yeah, of course, the guy who takes care of my horse and my dogs and is my chauffeur, I want their kids to have a good education. So I went to the school, and it was like way different. It wasn't like doggy dog. Everybody was different and kind of proud of their difference. Now, it did have a kind of class structure. There were the popular rich, kids who were more richy than the working class ones, but we were all having the same life. So, third grade had a great teacher, right? Fourth grade, even better. Fifth grade, I had a male teacher, right, who was really cool, and he was trying to, get in our heads about sex, about, tell the boys, don't be such jerks. Women are the other half of the population, and you're gonna, instead of farting and making stupid sounds and grossing the girls out, you might want to, think of them as something you might want to hang with. And again, so I was in this, group of kids. So there was my buddy Buzz. He was like Buzz Lightyear. He really was. And Harvey Kleiman, whose dad was a real rocket scientist. He came from Germany, and he was Jewish, and he worked for Sperry, and he was one of the head guys doing the UNIVAC, which was the big super duper computer of the time. And we got to see that, right? Buzz's dad was, not an engineer, but a technician at Bell Labs in Long Island. And what is not understood was that because Tesla was in Long Island, he built Wardenclyffe there. Everything from Glen Cove, where I was, out to Montauk was one gigantic dimensional science project. And there were all kinds of things underground, and all of these big estates became laboratories like NYIT, New York Institute of Technology, near CW Post, and SUNY. These were all DARPA universities, meaning when good old President Eisenhower said, watch out for the military industrial complex, he should have said, watch out for the military banking higher education complex, because that's really, and media. That's what, in 1947, with the pass of the National Security Act, we became Nazi Germany. That's what that bill did, turned us into Nazi Germany, because Operation Paperclip brought all of these guys here. The Donovan brothers basically sold us down because they caused World War II. They worked for Brown and whatever legal company, which was a big international banking legal company / investment company / and they represented the top of the pyramid here. They were part of the managerial class. And, the two brothers, one started the CIA and one started, the CFR. They made the, Secretary of State, the State Department, being totally run by the Council for Foreign Relations and all the rest of the groups, the Trilateral Commission, the Builders Group, the Club of Rome, the 300, all of those took over our State Department and interconnected it to other State Departments of other parts of the planet. That's why it is a transnational corporate oligarchy of fascism. And it had started, in 1940. I mean, it started with Christopher Columbus, but what we got now and having to deal with now is what really went down in 47, where we really became, and that's why Donald Trump is so great. He lies so much. He is showing us what all of our institutions, Catholic Church, when I went into seminary, and I kind of knew religions were a joke because of all like the Cardinal Cushing, who looked like Dracula family, and all the other people that I knew in religious situations. The best people were treated like crap. The guys who were pedophiles and crooks were bishops and cardinals. So I knew this wasn't right. And my mom, to the day she died, you wanted to be a priest. What kind of. Anyway, so North Shore School, go into third grade. And so I had this group of friends, right? And the first day, my first friend in that school, I show up, and again, I have this great knack of being invisible, right? I just kind of, I'm wallpaper, and I watch everybody, right? I observe everything. And I go to, lunch room, and, my mom made me my little paper bag, and I got the container of milk they gave, which, it's like chalk. They already started to destroy it. Anyway, so I had my container of milk, and this guy named Hoagland, JP, sat down, and he was like in a suit. He had a jacket, he had a vest, a little boat, nice white shirt, pants, everything was. And he goes, "Can I sit here?" And there's like nobody at the table. I mean, all the other tables have their cliques. There's nobody at our table. I said, "Sure, have a seat. My name's Al. I'm JP." He goes, "Do you want your milk?" And I go, no, it's all yours. I've opened it, tasted it. I love the way it tastes. And he's got this big white ring around his mouth. And he's like, he goes, "Would you like to see my gun?" I go, "Sure." And his jacket, and he pulls out a Walter PBK, oh 07. And he goes, "This is 007. And it's not a toy. It is the real thing." And he takes it apart, the whole thing, takes apart right there, takes the napkin, puts it out there, puts all the parts, and I'm looking at it, and it's got a clip, it's got bullets in it, I look at it, and he puts it all back together, and this is, here we are in third grade, and we're sitting in the cafeteria, and we're all by ourselves, the crowd's around us, and no one notices that he takes a gun out, takes it apart, puts it, all the parts are there, puts it back together, and takes it back to us. And I'm like, whoa. So we instantly became friends. And so that, so we were in the same class. So we're, and so we're, and I live not that far. I can take the bus or I can walk. I got the choice. And the bus goes like all over the place, and then I'm the last to get off. But I'm over here where, I can just walk this. And yeah, it's a couple miles, but I like to walk. My grandma would walk me hundreds of miles, so I'm a walker. So, so he goes, "You want to come home?" I said, "Sure." So I go to his mom's home, right? And she's like Donna Reed. I mean, Mary Homemaker. She's, making cookies, and she's got the apron, and she's got this beautiful little dress that she's wearing, and her like her shoes, and she's got everything, but she's got two pearl-handed 45s in a holster around her waist, and it's got suspenders over it. So it's like, and she's just making cookies and getting ready for dinner. And we walk in. She goes, "Oh, you have a new friend from school?" I go, "Yeah, my name's Al." "Oh, nice." And she goes, "JP, take your new friend down to the basement and show him the 50 cal." So we go down there, and there's a 50 caliber, a piece of armor. And they have a shooting gallery down in their basement that you can actually shoot the freaking 50 caliber. He goes, "You want to shoot it?" I said, "I don't think so. Let's go up and get some cookies." So we go up there, and she's just, and she's just so perfectly Betty Crocker, Donna Reed. It's like, but everyone's, got guns to the hilt. And she goes, "Would you like to stay for dinner?" I said, "Sure." And she goes, "Well, call your mom." And I call up my mom. I say, "Mom, I'm going to stay at my new friend's." "Oh, that's good. You met somebody at school. Good. Sure, stay up there, right? Can they drive you home?" And I said, You know, do you know where? Oh yeah, we can drive you there. We know exactly where that is. No problem. Tell your mom we'll get you home by 7 o'clock. And it's still kind of sunny. You know, still, still kind of summer. Anyway, so the crowd shuffles in. There's JP's dad, and he is. He works for Colt Industries. His older brother works for Colt Industries. Um, Uncle Louis is staying with him, and he's, in the Air Force, and he's like in charge of all their machine guns. I mean, these people are totally gun enthusiasts, and I find out that their great grandfather started the first thing that became the National Rifle Association. These people had guns in their DNA. And so that's my first really good friend. And so they showed me, it's their religion, their everything. They wanted me to be as gaga for guns. And so if I was to learn about guns, these were the people. So they taught me how to shoot, how to take a gun apart, what a gun was, how to do it, everything about a gun. And I'm actually pretty good with a gun. But three things I don't like about a gun: the way they smell, the noise they make, and after you shoot it, the primer is a thing called cordite, and it has a smell all unto itself. And I'm a guy, when I was that young, I was allergic to everything. So, and the first time, I went down there and shot a gun. It's in a very confined space, and I kind of broke out. Nearly died, And so they said, "Oh, it's the cordite. You must be allergic to it." Some people are. Well, I was allergic to everything. So they went to the effort to get me a mask, so I wouldn't, get choked up by the cord. I mean, these people are amazingly sweet and nice. So anyone who goes on about people with guns, I just kind of say, "Well, you just don't know about what guns are." So I'm a guy who doesn't like guns. Now, I know guns. I can shoot them. I'm pretty good at it. I haven't really shot a gun. So I would go to, all the NRA things with these people. So I met all the NRA people. Now, the NRA today is way different than that. They were all these people who were like Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart, I'm sure it's not that way anymore. And they were intelligent folk, not morons, right? And anyway, so a little connective tissue. So, when I was in New York and with Grandpa Stahl and Mike Finelli, who was a real mobster godfather, but he loved me because I was his electrician and I was always honest, true blue. Did everything I said I would do. Never had an excuse or whined or did anything like all those other made men. Anyway, they had a thing on McDougal called the Italian Men's Gun Club or something like that. And you had to be a made man to go in there. But because Mike Pinelli was the godfather, he said, "Oh, let's go to dinner there once." And he told me, about guns. And I said, "Yeah." So we had a nice dinner, nice Italian dinner. And we went down. They had a armory down in the basement. Man, these guys, they had every kind of gun you could imagine. So they had them all in nice drawers, and they had a guy who took care of them because most of these morons. There was a guy I worked for. His name was Tony Two Toes, and his name was that because he blew the other three off when he was cleaning his gun. So, they said, "Which gun?" I said, "Oh, look, a Walther PBK," and they said, first off, they were amazed that I knew what kind of gun that was, and that I would use it because it's a finicky gun. Well, it was JP's favorite gun. He showed me all the reasons why you should have a Walther PBK and how to get over the finicky parts of it, right? And one of the nice things about the Walther PBK, if it was kept correctly, trigger was very sensitive, right? And this is a gun. If you were in sync, if you were in the flow, you could really be accurate with this gun. And not in a long distance. This was not a long distance gun, but within 20 yards, if you were in the flow at one with your gun, it was pretty accurate and really, really quick. So I take the gun, make sure the clip's in there, da da da, take the thing, and I just go, I empty the whole clip into the thing, and I don't get it like straight, but I get it within that first, you know, little circle there, meaning if that was your chest, you wouldn't have one. And all these guys were like, and I just kind of put it back in the thing and closed it. And Mike was just so proud because I never told anybody how good I was with a gun, you know, and I still don't. I don't brag about that. And, you know, hey, that was the last time I shot a gun, and I was 24 years old. So I'm pushing 70, so that's a good chunk of time between me and shooting a gun. So, and every time I had a chance to, shoot a gun and show people who thought they were hot shit about their gun aficionado-ness, I never talked about it, never said it, But I'm talking about, grammar school and all the different friends I had. And so that was JP. And then Buzz, and Buzz he was the really most popular kid. He was handsome. Even in third grade, he was taller than everybody. He was lean. He was always, smart. He played sports really well, but he hung out with us. He could have hung out with the jocks. He could have hung out with this. He could have hung out with that. But no, he hung out with. And then there was Vince. Vince was, he never grew more than 5'5", and he got to be an admiral in the Navy. And he loved boats. And now there was a guy who is the Quentin. He was the thing of. He knew what he wanted to do when he was in third grade. He said, "I'm going to be an admiral." Nobody in his family was in the Navy. He said, "I'm going to be I'm going to be an admiral in the U.S. Navy," and he loved aircraft carriers. He hated flying, but he loved aircraft carriers. And he was just a walking contradiction. But he showed, if you wanted a good example, and he didn't come from a really rich family, again, he came from an immigrant family, and he went to Annapolis, and he first went to the Merchant Marines, and then he went to the Coast Guard, and then he went to Annapolis. And when he went to Annapolis, he was almost a bit too old. He was in his 20s when he was plebe, and he went to Vietnam. He became an admiral. And that's one of the guys who kind of stays in contact with me. This Christmas I got about 8 phone calls from. That's the one thing of keeping your same phone number for 20 years. A number of people called me up I hadn't talked in at least 10 years, and it was so nice because it was like just yesterday that I talked to them. Our friendships are so solid that we went from. It was that comfortable. We just kind of went right back to where we were 15, 20 years ago when the last time we talked to each other, right? And there was no apology, oh, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. No, it was great. So I had, that's why I dropped John off at the airport to go see his kids Sunday, and I really haven't been down town, stayed up here. Because, the juice of the hill was here, was like, staying with a good old dog, So, let's see what you guys are saying here. Yep. That's okay. I didn't need that book. Heard it's instructive. Yep. There's something healing about horse. Yeah, no kidding. Yep. Guys, yep, that's right, Mike. Go look up their history. It's truly freaking amazing. It's a good backdoor into, what's really going on. Now, these guys, the banksters, the sock puppets, the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand, all those guys can only exist when we don't do anything, when we do not lead by example. and we don't have to, be part of Q, because all of, Donnie only got to be president because the hidden hand wanted him to be, the wrecking ball. Yes, the age of deception. But that um, song by the Who, the old gang, same as the new gang, and we can't get fooled again. It takes, you have to be ever vigilant, right? The pond scum. Yep, that's all they are. The pond scum. They're not in charge. Yes, the breakaway civilization, which is the hidden hand. Hail Hydra. You know, they're out there. Their technology. So the next red flag is not going to be a war in Iraq or Iran or because, like I said, we bombed everything you can bomb there. What we're going to have is alien invasion. That's why they made that movie Emergence Day or Whoopty Day or whatever the day was, Independence Day, right? And again, whenever it's like 1984 and the Institute of News or Freedom or Truth, everything you hear, it's the opposite. So when you hear Independence Day, it means Slavery Day. When you hear No Child Left Behind, every child left behind, right? No new taxes, right? Build a wall. The wall, if they ever do build that wall, the only reason they're doing it is to keep us in. Now the thing is, it's ended already, and these guys are scared shitless. So we have to. That's why the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies. We have to start developing new aesthetic technologies. Not the same old same, because everyone keeps going to the same old same, and all the same old same will do is turn us this color, radioactive. And that's what the Georgia Stones are about. I went and saw those things, right? I was living in that neck of the woods, and some friend of mine said, there was never a road to this place, and then they built 85, and they have an exit right up there. It is. So we went and looked at it, and most of everything you read on it, it's, be kind to the earth and your fellows, and treat everyone nice. But the first one off the top is only have 500 million people on the earth. That means you have to kill 98% of everyone who's here now, and not in a nice way. Not like, oh, so the world would be a better place. Can we blow your head off? No, it's like, so, what could do that but an alien invasion? Did you ever see that movie, Childhood Zen? And after 50 years of the aliens being here and curing cancer and stopping war, and everyone has a great time, everyone says, "Well, we want to see what you look like." He comes out and he looks just like he's red as Santa Claus, and he's got hooves and big horns, and his name is Satan. The great illuminator. But the rest of the mass of the greed, the jealous, and all of that is because they're stuck in the illusion of being a mud puppet. They have no idea, no anything about ascension. No connection with all their relations. It's me against everybody. It's always about me, me, and that's why Donald Trump is so important, because he is the poster child of that. You can't. It's like, you got to be kidding me about this guy. Uh, yeah. Yep, and that like again, they are the administrating class, that crew. Yeah, about 27,000 years old. Yep, that's exactly it, Jay. Yep. Yep. You love the smell of corn? Well, we just have different taste. I know why you would, because it is so distinct. It's like popcorn, right? So, and talking about that, so John Boy, he's coming home tonight, right? And I am going to make him, or I have made him, because I'm sure he's not eating very well, um, a a nice dinner, And this is me, his friend. First, I made a really nice stew, vegetarian stew, that he can eat for the rest of the week. And then I made a nice little stir fry of onions, garlic, celery, and those little yellow things. But I ate most of it. And then I have a very nice sauce of buffalo and vegetables and rice. And so that's what he has waiting for him. So he just doesn't have to eat a loaf of bread, And so now we're gonna go downstairs and light a fire, right? And I'll continue the story. So I had this crew of friends, right? I met in third grade. JP was the first, and then Buzz Lightyear, Vinny, Gottlieb, whose dad was a real rocket scientist, and we made a really interesting, because we made all kinds of experiments and built forts and just had, because where we lived was right on the edge of these golf courses and big estates and lots of open land and farms, and we just had a grand old time. And the thing, so in third grade, I met these guys over a period of a few weeks, right? And there was girls, right? And so there were the preppy girls and the popular girls and the athletic girls, and then there were the extra girls, because this town, there's Garden City, not Garden City, Glen Cove, the city, and then three little towns, Glen Head being one, and they were all of people who worked for really rich people. And when you have really rich people, you have a crew that supplies the kind of lifestyle that the rich want. Back in the days of prohibition, they wanted alcohol and gambling and prostitution, and there was a group of people who did that. And they were just like plumbers and carpenters, electricians, And so there was three girls: Kim Romano, Debbie Soul, Lisa Stiles, and one other. And she came from the rich crew, this other, right? But those three girls, their fathers were kind of, guys who got that stuff for the rich people. And so these girls, they knew the story way before anybody, right? These were really smart girls and smart human beings. And in third grade, that first day, before I even met JP, before lunch, in my first class, I sat next to this girl. And it was Debbie Soul. And she was unbelievably beautiful in the third grade. And so was Kim Romano, and so was Lisa Stiles. All three of them were like knockouts in third grade. And I was, that kind of stuff didn't even, right? And so Debbie was really good with numbers, right? And so I was, doing little torsion equation geometry in my little notebook, even though it's third grade and they want us to like go through the alphabet or something. And I'm doing this stuff. And she's like looking from her, and she goes, "Is that trigonometry?" I said, "Yeah, it's trigonometry." She goes, "We're in third grade. You're doing trigonometry, and I know what it is. I like you." So I said, "Well, I'm glad. I like you." And Debbie was, I had these four girls, and you know how Forrest Gump had his little girlfriend? I had four of them, and they were all different, right? But I related to them in the same way, and I wasn't thinking that, oh, smelly girls. No, because women in my life were important and usually the smartest of the crew. And so Debbie, you're doing trigonometry, and I know what it is. I like that. And Kim, she will probably be the first female president. No one has heard of her, but she'll come out of maybe not because she's smarter than that. Anyway, I'm going to light the fire now. Let's see. Whoops. Did I hit something? Are we still there? I didn't lose anybody. But so oxygen is what makes a fire work. I need a tripod. Anyway, and I'm back. We still there? We still here? Well, the fire may start. I have to go up and get my little other gizmo. It's hard to do this all by myself. I need a crew. Are we still connected? Are we still here? Okay, we're back. Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to have to stick with this because it's safer. I'm going to turn that off. Anyway. Okay, we're back. Yep, we're back. Okay. So, that was third grade. So I had these four female friends. and 6 guy friends, and I could never get the two together. The guys were like, no, we're building rocket ships and time machines, and girls don't understand that stuff. Well, Debbie, they all kind of did. Debbie was quite smart. She was so smart, she could act dumb. Anyway, I'm to share an incredible woman, very instructive. Listen carefully at your leisure. Okay. And anyone who has stories like that, again, drop anything you want on my the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Lots of you do, and I love reading them, and I love getting back to you, and I love talking on the phone with you once you give me your phone number. Anyway, so we go through 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and my little cadre, there was one other person. His name was Richie Lasco. And Richie, with a Y, was the first character I met with, no, I knew a Jimmy too. Teddy's brother, Jimmy. But Richie was a true cheeky monkey. I mean, he hung from the chandeliers. So our grammar school was something from the 19th century. It had Roman columns, 3 stories. Anyway, so all of my friends and these 4 girls and some black girls and some black boys, the only black people in our whole school system, we were put together in the 6th grade where our teacher, her name was Roundtree, and she was like a Marine sergeant, drill sergeant, and she was hard as nails, and really everyone was like, oh, and her nickname was Square Bush because, she had this bush between her legs that she never trimmed, and it was like, it looked like something out of The Hobbit, one of the forests, right? So her nickname was Square Bush. Anyway, and she was big and looked like a football linebacker. She did not look like a woman except for breasts. She had some pretty amazing breasts. And so for some reason, my 6 male friends, my 4 females, and all the other black and Hispanics and Jewish of our school were put into this class, and there was about 20 of us. And when we showed up, we were like looking at each other, because if you went to, Mrs. Roundtree's class, you were, considered, almost expendable, or you're going to jail. You were going to be one of the ones that go to jail. You weren't in the top. We're back. Are we still back? So, the first